This is the Tudors Dynasty and Beyond podcast. History with a twist. And now your host, Rebecca Larson.
Hello and welcome back to the Tudors Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Larson, and today I get to welcome back to the show one of my favoriteest people, and Dr. Emma, don't get jealous, but Melanie really is my favorite person in the whole wide world. Melanie Taylor, welcome.
Rebecca, this is fantastic. And to invite me onto your show, one of your anniversary shows. Well done for having 8 years of podcasting. This is fantastic. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yes, I am so looking forward to our discussion today because it's kind of a controversial take, but we love to also to talk about miniatures and portraits on this show. And today we are going to be talking about one miniature that you've probably seen, but not really paid too close attention to. Melanie, why don't you let everybody know what we're going to be talking about?
Well, there in the V&A in London, there is a very, very curious portrait of a young man with red hair, curly red hair, holding a hand from a cloud. And it has a motto which says, Atici amoris ergo, on one side of his head. And on the other side, there it says, Anno Domini 1588. Curious. That's the year the Armada launched and came up. The motto, being Latin, has been translated by various academics for possibly meaning Greek love or Athenians because of love. He's been identified, or suggested identities are the Earl of Essex. Leslie Hotson thought it might be Shakespeare, both of which have been disproved. And the meaning behind the motto, let's just look at it obviously. By, with, from, or through the love of Atticus. Who is Atticus? Is it Greek love? Is it homosexual love? Who is behind the hand? Coming from, on the Hilliard version, because there are 2 copies, there are five clouds. On the copy, the man's got a purple hat, and there are 7 clouds. And this is the sort of visual puzzle that the Elizabethans loved. I mean, you think we're sitting here, I'm in Surrey, you're in Minnesota, and we are surrounded by imagery. You've got it on your phone, you've got it on the TV. Everywhere you go, there are pictures. You've got them on the walls. Let's go back to the 16th century. You and I probably wouldn't have had any pictures.
Probably not.
The only ones you might have seen would be the wall paintings in church, altarpieces. So this is an elite art form for the wealthy. Now, how big is your phone? I mean, mine's that big. Yeah. This miniature's about that big, this bit down here.
Oh.
So literally, you hold it in your hand. So it's an intimate, very intimate thing that you'd give to a lover, or you'd give to your, if you were wealthy enough. Hilliard would charge you £2 to £3 pounds, which is what, $5 or thereabouts?
Yeah,
at most. Nowadays, that equates to about £2,000 or £3,000. It would have taken him 4 or 5 days to paint, and for something as complicated as this one, they would have discussed. He and this unknown guy would have sat there and said, well, what do you want? What do you want it for? Oh, I want it as a present. Okay. And okay, Mr. Hilliard, who, when he painted this, was a very good-looking middle-aged guy, born in 1547. And Elizabeth thought he was wonderful because he's got dark brown eyes, dark curly hair, a mischievous glint, a beard. Stop it. Go take a cold shower.
He sounds so attractive.
Oh, if you can find those, again, in the V&A, there is his self-portrait. Mm-hmm. And in it, he's got a dandelion in his hat. And he painted it when he was in Paris. And he just got married, and he and his wife were out there for 2 years. And she came home early because she was pregnant. with their firstborn. And that dandelion, which in French is dent de lion, teeth of the lion, is actually a symbol for sorrow and grief, as though they're being parted. Because he
Oh.
stayed in Paris for some time and she came back to London and gave birth to Daniel. Well, this was at the very beginning of his career as Elizabeth's favoured portrait of miniatures. I call them limners. So if we can talk about limners, that would be great, because it's so much easier than portrait miniaturist, which bit of a mouthful. And anyway, this young man holding this hand from a cloud would have suggested this is how he wanted to be painted. So you've got how many clouds, and now you have to put yourself into the shoes of what they would have been educated. A man of this thing, he would have been educated. Hilliard would have had an education. He was out in Geneva, went out there with John Bodley's family at the age of 8, and was there during the reign of Mary I. So he was definitely there with John Knox and Calvin. So he was brought up in, real sort of strict Protestant. No pictures in the churches, whitewashed walls. So you can imagine an 8-year-old sitting there really bored, but who can draw? He's probably doodling away there on the back of the hymn book. Stop it. What are you doing, Nick? Behave.
I have to ask you, Melanie, because you were talking about how you would sit down with the artist, let's say, and you describe to them what you want. How does that work with the symbolism? If I'm going to sit down with Hottie Hilliard, that's what I'm going to call him right now, Hottie Hilliard, and I want to have certain things portrayed in this piece of art he's doing for me, how does that work? Do I say things like, "Hey, I want to show that I'm a virgin. Can you make that show up in my portrait?" How did that work?
You'd probably be painted with long hair, loose hair. You wouldn't, it would. A married woman's hair is all hidden. I mean, there's a wonderful book somebody did their PhD on portrayal of hair, and it's across all nations. You think of those who are Muslim, they wear the hijab,
Yeah,
and that's today. The Orthodox Jews have all their head shaved and their hair made into a wig and that sort of thing. Back in the 16th century, a married woman would wear a wimple, or but their daughter would have her hair loose or tied back and semi-loose or in plaits. But hair is going to drive men wild, especially long red hair. Not making any observations here.
where's
Okay.
Hottie Hilliard when I need him? All right, so let's go back to the clouds. So you mentioned the clouds a couple of times, and about the number of clouds. So in the original, how many clouds did you say there were?
5.
And what does that mean?
5 is the number of marriage, and that is according to the interpretation of the Christian Kabbalah. And this had started in Florence with 2 scholars who were actually very much patronized by the Medici. And like all things in history, it's follow the money.
Mm.
So the middle of the 15th century, you've got the Medici, who are funding virtually every single royal family and duke and prince who's getting a bit short on the readies. And they had an academy. And Marsilio Ficino and Piero della Mirandola, yes, get it right, were 2 guys who were studying mysticism and the values of value of numbers. I've got a couple of quotes here, which not 2, is it? Who is it? John Dee, who was Elizabeth's astrologer, but he was also hugely influential on teaching mathematics to the explorers like Raleigh and Frobisher and Drake because they needed it for navigation. Anyway, John Dee quotes Mirandola on number and follows Pico, Mirandola, Reuchlin, and a guy called Agrippa in developing intensely the Pythagorean or mathematical side of the movement. And this is the wonderful efficacy and virtue in numbers, as well as to good as to bad. And not only most eminent philosophers do unanimously teach, but also Catholic doctors. That's Agrippa. He's keeping on the right side of the church, not to be accused of necromancy and end up tied to a stake and going up in flames. But if anybody's ever looked at anything like the illuminated manuscripts, which I seem to spend my life looking at margins and things, you will see flowers like the pansy comes from the French penser, to think, but it also has 5 petals, the 5 wounds of Christ. It's also the symbol of the crucifixion and the sacrifice. But then you've got color as well. And white is purity, blue and gray. And there's 2 gray, 1 blue and 2 white. What's that? Hang on. Yes, that's 5.
Who knew there was going to be math today?
Oh, don't. I'm hopeless with anything more complicated than I run out of fingers and toes. But in the copy, it's not a straight copy. There are 7.
Wow.
And they are a completely different total and the way that the numbers work up. By the way, I've got a paper on this on my academia.edu page, if anybody wants to access it. And the V&A have added this research to their curatorial collection, which is, I'm rather gone pink round the ears.
It's a good achievement, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Well, we can include a link too in the show notes for this article.
Yeah, I think academia.edu is behind a paywall. So if anybody wants to contact me, I'm quite happy to share. Actually, should I put it up on my website?
Yeah, that would work. And then we can just link to that.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that. Anyway, this idea of hiding messages wasn't just Hilliard. There were people in France who were producing books on it, books of emblems. And there was a guy called Claude Paradin, and then in England there was a guy called Geoffrey Whitney, and he was using wood blocks that had been used to produce Paradin's books in Antwerp. But the Italians had been doing it since the end of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th. So they were way ahead of us. And also Holbein uses a hand from a cloud in 1532, 1534. And that's possibly a medal design for anybody who was swearing the oath of supremacy.
Oh.
Which, and that has a Latin model. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this, but it translates to, I desire to observe that which I have sworn. And we know that those who didn't swear the oath of supremacy, such as Thomas More, ended up on the block.
Without their head.
Yeah, a large gap between there.
Yes, yeah.
So it's not an unknown pose. And Hilliard in his draft treatise says that he is inspired by Holbein, which is surprising because he was born 4 years after Holbein died. So he couldn't have known it.
Let's talk about the hand. And I want to pull it up here and look at it, maybe if my computer will let me. But
it's a lovely hand. It's such a delicate hand.
Yes, I want you to describe it, if you can, to those who are just listening and not looking at the image.
Well, it's a very delicate hand, and round the cuff there is a gathering of, there's a ruff, and it's got black work on the edges. So it's somebody who's posh, because that's expensive. Now, you need to have a microscope to be able to see that above that wrist and that ruff, there are 2 stones. And in Hilliard's, they're sapphires. They're rectangles and they're edged in gold. And in the copy, they're amethysts. But you can't see them with the naked eye. You've actually got to have a magnifying glass or a microscope.
Are they hidden behind the frame at all?
No, it is literally just above the ruffle and the clouds.
Wow.
So there's another thing which, somebody would sort of casually pick it up and say, "Oh, that's nice, Elizabeth," because I'm sure that this was destined for Elizabeth, and which will become apparent later, and say, "Oh, but they wouldn't see these tiny stones." And sapphires, of course, are worn by royalty, and they're also supposed to ward off drunkenness, but not as efficacious as amethysts, which are again a royal stone, but also worn by cardinals and churchgoers and bishops and archbishops, and they too are definitely supposed to ward off drunkenness.
Interesting.
The ancient Greeks said that amethysts, you put that in your cup and it warded off drunkenness.
So I could just drink.
It doesn't work.
I was just gonna say, so I could just drink as much as I want.
No, it doesn't work. It really doesn't work.
That does kind of seem like a waste of money at that point.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I'd prefer it in a ring.
So we have this delicate hand with this black work ruff around their wrist. We have some precious jewels. What else do we see in this hand?
Somebody does not want to be known.
Why do you say that?
Otherwise, you might have a name on there written in gold.
Oh.
Now, this is why it's such a puzzle. Who does that hand belong to? It's just not hanging out of a cloud, not attached to anybody.
Right. And it's very delicate. So can we put a gender on it?
It could be a mother. It could be a married woman that he's in love with.
Oh, so it's like a secret.
They have to keep their love secret.
Oh, I love one of those stories.
Oh yeah. But if he's gazing into the distance as though to say, "Oh, can't quite get there. Oh dear, oh my love. Oh dear, if only we could be together. If only we could acknowledge our relationship."
Mm.
But why two versions? That's the other thing. And because they're so small, how come both versions have actually survived some 400 years?
Why? How? Tell us.
Don't know. I'm researching that at the moment. I have my theories, and I'm 90,000 words into this because it's taken me down some pretty arcane and interesting areas, and into Spain and Spanish archives, and into other archives elsewhere here, and private archives, and talking to various academics who've looked at me and gone, "Gosh, heavens, I suggest you write it as a novel." And that was back in 2006 when I'd been down to the archives and in Kew and come across something in the P's, which are the front sheets of the King's Bench proceedings. And that shows a picture of the monarch, be they king, up until Mary the First, of course. And that shows the monarch as God's representative on earth of mercy and everything, what can only be described as mercy, justice, and as we all learnt when the late Queen Elizabeth died, the minute she dies, Charles became king. It was immediately went across. So the coronation is, if you like, the ceremony which confirms him or confirms the next in line. Right. And I came across a P, which represents Elizabeth, and her hair changes.
Her hair, huh? What she get it
Yeah.
did she get it colored or cut or
No, no, it's pen and ink sketch, and it's no longer hanging down loose. It's hidden. It's up, and she's got a really smug expression on her face.
Okay, so as an art historian, when you see something like that, what does that tell you?
Oh my God. There is a secret here. What on earth is it?
Mm.
And you're thinking, right, roll back. This is 1561, Trinity term. What is it that, so we go back. Oh, okay. Go back to the September of 1560. What happened there?
1560.
Think who her favorite was.
Dudley, right? Robert Dudley.
Yeah, Robert
Oh,
Dudley
1560. That was when Amy Robsart died,
fell
right?
down the stairs.
Yes.
And the P for that law term, which was the Michaelmas one, she's actually got her hair loose and she's looking sideways and she's worried.
Oh.
And you thinking, I mean, it's an extraordinary visual comment to make. And my whole thing about research the last 18 years has been visual imagery is evidence. You know, people say, where's the documentary evidence? It's there in front of you. It's a painting. No, it's not. It's a document. It's telling you something. And these fronts are only ever seen by lawyers or their clerks. Nobody's interested in what's there. So it gives the artist an opportunity to make a political comment. And there's one of 1528 when Henry is contemplating the future of the Tudors dynasty. Dare I give you a plug?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's standing there and he's looking at a rose. And it just happens to be, this is 1528, it's the same time as the whole King's Great Matter kicks off.
Yes.
And you're thinking, right, so it's not just me seeing it. And right the way through all of that hoo-ha with Wolsey and then Cromwell and the divorce and Campeggio coming over and it all being, what one would say, a bit messy.
Yeah.
On these Ps, there are all sorts of images. And nobody ever looks at this source of imagery. But it's all there for anybody who wants to do a PhD on them. Get there before I do.
I feel like you're just beating around the bush at telling us what's happening here because this is like one of those things in history that doesn't happen very often, but we could have suspected and maybe
It was rumored.
Let's talk about this.
There were rumors. I mean, de Quadra, who was the Spanish ambassador, he was writing back saying that there are rumors that Dudley is married in a morganatic marriage. They've been married secretly in December of 1560. Mm-hmm. And who were the witnesses? Oh, Dudley's brother, Ambrose. And, oh, Dudley's sister, Mary. And it was very quietly held in a chapel. And the reason being was that the Queen was ill, allegedly. She was not well. She was vomiting. He was back in the good books because let's face it, when your wife dies and you've been absent and everybody's going, she's going to die, and everybody was talking about it because obviously Dudley and Elizabeth were madly in love, put it that way. And he's inconveniently married.
Right.
And this is where we have to go back to Atticus. Thereby, through the love of Atticus. There was a guy called Herodes Atticus in the 1st century who was married to when he was 40, he married a 14-year-old, keep your hair on, girl called Regilla. And she has an incredibly long name. and Tertulla is part of that. Regilla means little queen, and Tertulla means thirdborn. So Elizabeth is the thirdborn of Henry.
Right. Right.
Her mother had Tertulla in her name. What we don't know is whether or not Anne Boleyn was the thirdborn of the Boleyn family, because we don't know when Anne was born, do we?
No, we don't.
I'm sure Anne Boleyn scholars will be able to tell me that. And unfortunately, at some point when Regilla was pregnant with another child, she'd already had a son. They'd obviously had a flaming great row, and Herodes she died conveniently.
Like poison, convenient.
Yeah, the parallels to the story of Herodes Atticus and the murder of his wife is quite stark. And I have to thank Professor Beard, because I was going up every single blind alley. And so I thought, I need a classicist who's going to tell me about this guy called Herodes Atticus. Can't find much about him apart from a single line. And she said, go and read a book by Sarah Pomeroy, and it's all about Regilla, a case of domestic abuse in classical times. And I couldn't believe what I was reading, because the parallels with Dudley were quite extraordinary. So you're thinking, oh, this guy, we're getting to the point where you're thinking, okay, right, fine. And of course, when this came into the public domain, when it became part of the British Museum collection, George Virtue, who was a great friend of Horace Walpole, identified him as, the Earl of Essex, who was, of course, Dudley's stepson.
Yeah, yeah.
And Master of Horse, because the other Atticus, who was a great friend of Cicero, was an equestrian knight. And Robert Dudley was also Elizabeth's Master of Horse, which is based on the Roman equestrian knights who were, part and parcel of Roman society, one down from senator. So you've got to know. Yeah, go on.
I want to go back to the beginning here when you said that Robert Dudley married Elizabeth in secret because she was ill. Now, when you said that, I immediately went, well, why would he marry her if she was just sick? Let's say she was sick and dying. What would be the benefit of marrying her?
Good question.
What else could make you ill, Melanie?
Oh, morning sickness. Oh,
there we go. I've just been trying to get you here.
yeah. Well, until our current Princess of Wales was pregnant, who'd heard of hyperemesis gravidarum? Acute morning sickness, where you are so ill that you actually end up losing weight.
Yeah.
Now, in the following March, the Venetian ambassador, Paolo Tiepolo, was writing back to the Doge. How the hell did he know? I mean, he's in Madrid. Saying, it's rumored that Elizabeth is dying because she's swelling and she's getting very thin. But she's swelling. She's suffering from dropsy, just like her half-brother and half-sister. That's what killed them. Well, dropsy, end of the 19th century, fast forward to that, you've got dropsy actually being recognized as major organ failure. It's a symptom of, either your liver, your kidneys, or your heart. You just sort of, bits of you swell up. Also alcoholism, you can end up swelling, abdomen swelling and things. But nobody, women have been pregnant since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And who knows of any recorded case in classical times of somebody's getting really thin and swelling up and surviving dropsy to reign for another 45 years.
It doesn't add up, does it?
It doesn't add up. Likewise, there are no recorded cases of hyperemesis gravidarum until you get to the 21st century. And I contacted various people and various consultants and said, are there any papers being written and research into this particular condition? And they all went, no, it's just beginning to be researched.
I think this is fascinating.
Now, there are, the fact that George Virtue saw him and thought, it's the Earl of Essex. What on earth made him think that? Because Gerhardt's has painted portraits of the Earl of Essex, which I'm sure Virtue probably wasn't able to put up on the screen like I was. I could put them all up and just compare them, which is so easy now. And because he's dark, yes, he doesn't have bright red beard, he doesn't have bright red hair, and he certainly doesn't have curly eyes. Now, this guy's got blue eyes. And we know that Elizabeth had dark brown eyes because she inherited her mother's dark brown eyes. Dudley was known as the Gypsy. And he apparently looked, well, from Hilliard's portraits of him, not Teerlink's portraits, he seems to have hazel eyes. And when it came down to genetics, I went off to a great friend of mine, Professor Pat Wiltshire, and said, tell me about genetics. And she gave me the Idiot's Guide to Genetics. And I said, so if this was an illegitimate son of Elizabeth and Dudley, surely he'd have brown eyes. Not necessarily, says Pat. At which point I went, oh, you've just blown my theory completely out the window for me disproving that this guy thinking. She said, no, he could be a chimera. At which point I realized I'd completely lost the plot. I was not ever going to pursue a career in genetics.
So interesting.
But you've got more than this.
The eye color thing I always find interesting, but you know what? I kind of want to go back just a little bit and talk about the question that always pops up when any accusation is made of Elizabeth being pregnant. What is the first thing people use to try and debunk that idea? It's usually, people would have known her. The women around her would have known she was pregnant when they dressed her.
You only need to do it the once. And I mean, my dad was a GP, and he had a couple of young girls who had got themselves pregnant. And there was one particular girl who, it was a really hot summer in the 60s, and she was wearing very baggy sweaters. And one day she thought that she had indigestion and, surprise, surprise, gave birth, which, much to her parents and herself, it was a big surprise because she didn't realize that there were ways of not getting pregnant.
Right.
Now, the women around her, how you keep it quiet, I don't know. But it shows a level of loyalty. Who was around at that time? Cat Ashley.
Yes.
And John Astley. Paul Doherty wrote The Secret Life of Elizabeth I. I'm not the first with this. I'm the one who's coming up with the idea that there's visual evidence. Paul Doherty has actually come up with written stuff going through Elizabeth's prayers, and also Martin Hume's transcriptions of the Simancas records, because it was Charles Englefield, who was a Catholic recusant, who recorded all of this, because in June 1587, a guy called, there was a shipwreck up on the north coast of Spain, and a guy travelling under the papers of Arthur Sutherland, was washed ashore. And when he was arrested, because he was English, and of course, in June 1587, it's only a few months after the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, who was, of course, the rightful heir to the throne according to the Catholics, etc., etc., etc. He gets arrested and he says, "I'm not Arthur Sutherland. I am Arthur Dudley. I am the illegitimate son of Elizabeth I and Sir Robert Dudley.
Mhm.
Take me to Madrid." And he is taken to Madrid, and he's questioned by Englefield, and Philip meets him. Sorry, King Philip II meets him, and Arthur is given a per diem, a daily allowance of 6 gold crowns, and he's invited to remain at court, i.e., under house arrest.
So,
And of course, William Cecil, he's got his spies there. And there's a spy called BC who writes to Cecil and says, "There's a guy pitched up here. His name's claiming to be Arthur Dudley. And I have to say, I know what Dudley looks like. And if he is, he looks very much like his father."
oh, that's a pretty big statement, isn't it?
It's a big statement. And he said, "You need to know, and I don't have time to put it into code." So obviously somebody was coming back and he needed to get the message back to England. You've got Cecil, you've got Francis Walsingham, the Queen's spy master, and William Cecil and Walsingham really had blown it when they had Mary, Queen of Scots executed. That's another story completely. For that, you need to read John Guy's research, which is fabulous. But right the way up until then, William Cecil had been tasked by Elizabeth when she first came to the throne in November 1558, "Tell me the truth, even if it's unpalatable." And she regarded him as her right-hand man. He was her Secretary of State, and she adored him. And when he was dying, she was the one who was there at his bedside, feeding him broth, and they basically kissed and made up.
Wow.
Which, the loyalty there was huge. And of course, there's all the theories, who pushed Amy Robsart down the stairs? No, I must stop saying that. Except the coroner's report was found in 2009, which showed that Amy had 2 huge great holes in her head. One was 2 inches deep and the other one was 1 inch deep. Dints, D-Y-N-T-E-S. Two layers, 2 thumb bits, that's deep.
Yeah, that is deep.
And the other one, that deep, just the top of your thumb.
Still.
And on her, she had her cap on, which all her hair would have been up underneath, which would have, if she'd sustained this as she fell down the stairs, surely her cap would be off. But of course, Cunmore Place, which was where she was staying, no longer exists. And so we can't go back and have a look at the stairs, but we do know it was a dog leg. Was it stone? Was it wood? We don't know.
Okay.
Oh, and she conveniently also had a broken neck. So these 2 holes in her head. The coroner's report doesn't mention any blood. That doesn't mean to say that there wasn't any. It just doesn't mention it.
Right.
And she has a broken neck. Overkill, one might say.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, when you think about it, if they just thought she fell down the stairs, why would they investigate to look for blood anywhere anyway? They probably just focused on the stairs.
Yeah. And, let's face it, it points to Dudley.
It does look bad.
It?
Yeah.
It looks incredibly bad. And he panics and he goes to Cecil, who at this point is thinking of resigning and saying, "Oh my God, well, she's so under the thumb of Dudley, I might as well give up because she's not listening to me." And he goes straight to Cecil and he says, "Help, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. How could I have done it?" No, the last thing, that's the stupid idea, because no, I'll never be able to marry Elizabeth now.
Right.
unless she's pregnant.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
that go back to this P where she's looking over her shoulder and looking worried. That happened on September the 8th, and the Michaelmas term starts in October and finishes at the end of November. The P's have to be finished. What a super place to hide the Queen's worry that her favourite is going to go to the block for murder.
whoa.
Or,
Scandal.
or, ooh, I'm feeling sick.
Yeah, okay. So let's just say Elizabeth was pregnant with Dudley's child. They secretly married. Where does she where does she have this kid? And how is it
At a
kept
court. According to the records in Spain, the evidence that Arthur gives to Englefield was that he was taken as a baby, given to Isabella, um, oh gosh, Harrington, um, who she herself had been married to John Harrington, who in fact had been a servant of Tom Seymour.
Dun dun dun. But I got my
And
Thomas Seymour mention.
yeah, and also he had been in the Tower when Tom was arrested.
Yeah.
Um, he'd been arrested when Elizabeth had been in the Tower later on, and he'd seen the fair Isabella at the time. He was married to the illegitimate daughter of Henry VIII's embroiderer, who just happened to be an incredibly wealthy heiress. Handy. Always handy if you marry an heiress. And he spied Isabella, who was the daughter of the lieutenant of the Tower. And he's a poet, and he obviously fell in love with her from a distance. I mean, you think of all of the chivalric, tales of Arthur and the Round Table and rescuing damsels in distress and the romance of the Rose of, all of these troubadours. It's in true chivalric myth and legend. And it's Isabella who actually takes the infant Arthur and gives him to somebody called Robert Southern, who is a servant of Cat Ashley.
Oh, okay.
Now, Doherty has turned up Robert Southern's will in Worcester. He did exist. And he was an innkeeper. Anyway, it's the whole idea of how do you bring up an illegitimate child? Well, Southern was given a post under John Ashley, or Ashley,
Yeah.
up at Enfield. And he was on the estate. And of course, Enfield was one of Elizabeth's favourite hunting lodges. And it's not that far from Hatfield.
Convenient.
Convenient. And of course, the other thing, which is Elsing Palace was still above ground. That hadn't been demolished at that point. So, and that's on that whole Enfield, deer park. So that's an area I'm looking at to see, that was basically built for Edward VI as a prince by Daddy. So that you've got a built-in palace there, and this guy is a steward, and he's being brought up and he's educated, and he actually tells Englefield that he's educated and he's done Latin and he's done Greek, and so he would have been quite capable of making up a nonsensical motto to get all of us scratching our heads thinking, is this homosexual love? Is this along those? No, just look at it from a very simple point. By, with, from, or through the love of Atticus. And there are lots of Atticuses to choose from, but only one Herodes Atticus who parallels Dudley. So, but I can be accused of making my, the all of these elements fit my theory. But there's an Act of Parliament, 1570.
Okay, tell us about this.
Well, who would have drafted it?
15, 7, I don't know. This is the era.
Cecil.
Oh,
It's only
okay.
2 paragraphs, and it covers treason and the publishing of seditious books. Now, in 1570, if Arthur is who he says he is, he would have been 9. So he would have been getting to the point where he was, undergoing proper education.
For a prince.
And this, in the second paragraph, it talks about treason. And the one thing in the 1543 Acts of Succession and the previous ones and any other Act of Succession talks about legitimate heirs male. This one doesn't. It says natural heirs male.
So why is that significant?
Natural is code for born out of wedlock.
Mm.
Dunk.
So we're shining a spotlight on the fact that it is mentioned that she had a child.
No, it's hinted at. This is Danby's 1763 transcription of all of the previous Acts of Parliament. These antiquarians were very good at looking at all of these rolls of Acts of Parliament. And let's face it, something that's only 2 paragraphs long is going to be on a very thin roll on parchment, stuck in the Treasury, which is my next port of call to see if Danby has actually got it, transcribed it right. And it says natural, because I was going through one of the online books written in the 17th century, 18th century, which these rich men had time on their hands. They could do this sort of thing, which is... I'm surprised at the time that there wasn't a scratching of heads and what on earth did it, why is they put natural?
Yeah.
She was England's Virgin Queen, allegedly.
And what year did Robert Dudley die? Was that 88?
1588. Very shortly after they got the news of the Armada having been blown off course and Gravelines and going right the way up over the top of Scotland. And this summer, the storms we've had coming through here, how recently, where we've had hurricane force winds, and you get that round about September time with the equinox as well. You get the gales coming in. How on earth any of the Armada ships survived, I have no idea. And certainly Philip was not a happy bunny when they limped back into port, and his amazing navy had set forth. Mind you, he was a micromanager and certainly no sailor, and they had been outclassed. Drake and Hawkins and the rest of them had sent the far ships into Calais, and they made a run for it, because the last thing you want is ships full of gunpowder all catching alight.
Yeah, exactly. So, Melanie, at this point, and maybe I'm getting confused on the timeline, but at this point, the Spanish Armada, where is Arthur?
He's in Madrid.
Yeah, so he's not in a very good spot, is he?
No, he's a 24-year-old and if he's Arthur, and this second portrait with the purple hat, he claims he had been on pilgrimage to the Our Lady of Montserrat, which is in northern Spain. Now, he would have been brought up as an Anglican. So is this color of the purple and the amethyst showing that he's actually changed religions?
What do you think?
Well, Englefield writes in his report to Philip that I feel him a very feigned Catholic.
Really?
Yeah, and thinks that he might be a spy. Well,
So
if you're a spy, calling yourself Arthur Dudley and making that claim's a pretty poor cover story. I mean, that's mad.
you're like putting neon signs, lights over yourself over here.
Yeah, look at me. Oh my God. And he actually says to Englefield the next time, he says, I think, if people get to hear that somebody might try and murder me, what would be good if it can be put abroad that I am actually, I've disappeared, and I want to write a book and tell you all about it. And Philip reads all of these reports from Englefield about what Arthur's said and what's happened. Now, what would be lovely is if we could actually look at Englefield's reports. But Englefield's papers disappeared.
Oh no.
Yeah, they were being sent to Cardinal Allen, who was in Rome, and they vanished.
The Vatican has them.
No, it doesn't. Trust me, I have trawled through all of those catalogues looking for them. No, it doesn't. Anyhow, how convenient. If you go back to 1560 and everything that happened there, the acts of the Privy Council have also failed to be recorded from 1560 through to 1562. How convenient.
I was just thinking the same thing. How convenient. Isn't that another red flag? Like, hey, look over here.
Yeah, well, the whole Robsart story, I mean, was it Dudley? Obviously not. Because he was cleared, or was the coroner paid off? There's that one.
Yeah.
One theory is, and certainly Tracy Borman is very keen on this one, that it was Cecil, because he wanted to besmirch Dudley's character so that it wouldn't happen. My theory is it was Spain, for that same reason.
Wow. Okay. Wait. I feel like my head just exploded.
Yeah.
Explain this to me.
Right at the very beginning, do you remember Philip II proposes that, he'd been married to Elizabeth's half-sister, and he says, right, how about we get it together? And Elizabeth says, I'm not going to get married. She maintains this right the way throughout her reign. And whether she did or she didn't get married to Robert, we will never know. In that rumoured morganatic marriage, she's married somebody well beneath her of 1560. And if she had, that explains why she wasn't going to get married later, because she was already married. But since she wouldn't go public, when Robert marries Letitia in 1578, it might explain her explosion of anger. And John de Simier whispers in her ear, by the way, did you know that your favourite has just got married to your cousin?
She's like, you mean my husband married my cousin?
Yeah, and you're thinking he's a bigamist. Wouldn't be the first time. Charles Brandon, he was a bigamist.
Yeah, and it was a secret marriage. So who was going to come out and go, "Oh, no, he's already married to the queen."
Well, nobody's going to do that because it makes her a laughing stock, probably cause civil war. It would have been mayhem.
Wow.
And in 1578, of course, you have an 18-year-old Arthur who at this point decides that what he wants to do is to go on his travels and do a gap year or wandering around Europe, which causes another whole load of problems, which will be in my non-fiction book.
Yeah, you've mentioned it now twice, but I don't think you've mentioned the name of your book.
No, my novel is The Truth of the Line, which is all about Hilliard and his relationship with Elizabeth. And it weaves his story in with her. And it starts in 1572. And there's a prologue and there's an epilogue, because the epilogue is Robert Cecil in March 1603. And of course, they've taken the ring off her finger, which has the E and R, which if you flip it open, You've got Elizabeth on one side and this other woman. Everybody says it's Anne Boleyn, but she never knew her mother. Is it Cat Ashley? There's another one. Flip the hand grenade in there. And it's made out of mother of pearl. And on the inside, there's a grasshopper inlaid in gold and green enamel. It's a lovely piece of jewelry. And I weave that into the story. I also weave the symbolism of the phoenix and the pelican portraits in there because he painted those as well. And the first time he paints her, and all of those stories are all woven in there. And his marriage to Alice, and he goes on to have lots of other children, one of whom was stillborn. His name was Nicholas. And it's a love story. I'm sure, Elizabeth and Hilliard she was his, if you like, the mother which he had left when he was 8. And Mrs. Bodley's a lovely lady, but she's not the queen.
Right.
And, everybody down in Devon, you think she's got Raleigh, she's got Drake, she's got Hawkins, she's got these Devon guys who all have a link with Cat Ashley and the Champernowne family. And Cat has told her basically she was an educated woman and responsible for Elizabeth's education in the early years. And then there's Roger Ascham comes in and she learns Greek and she learns Latin and she's hugely intelligent. She speaks Italian, she speaks French, she speaks Latin, she does Greek. This is a highly intelligent woman. And she and Cecil play these mind games and they have puzzles and the acrostic poems. And so you can see, you get a feeling of intellectual competition, a lot of trust. I mean, Cecil himself is Welsh. And then you've got Parry, her cofferer.
Yeah.
All of whom are questioned, dare I say it, under the Seymours, Council of Regency. Cecil was part and parcel of the legal side along with Richard Rich. And these guys, they're there and they know what the rights of succession are. Because look, they've got Elizabeth, they've got Jane Grey, and they've also got Mary.
Yeah.
You've got 3 women.
Okay.
So when Edward died, you've got a huge number of you've got 3 Grey sisters, you've got Elizabeth, you've got Mary, and anybody else who might have a claim.
Well, let's go back to
Mary,
Elizabeth.
Queen of Scots. 7. No man in sight.
I want to talk about Arthur a little bit more, and let's look at what the end looked like. What year does Arthur disappear from the records? What happens to Arthur?
He's not mentioned in the records after 1588 until 1589, when he's mentioned in the past tense.
Who mentions?
It's one of the Spanish recorders. He's mentioned as, Arthur, late Arthur, calling himself Dudley. And, he was at that point, 26, 27, young man in hell. Did he succumb to poison? We don't know. Was he slung in a jail somewhere and forgotten? We don't know. Was he executed as a spy? I think we might have heard of that one. But certainly we don't just have no idea. So I resorted to facial recognition software.
Yeah, and what did you discover?
Oh boy. Well, I've got a documentary maker friend who has some interesting stuff. Now, where is it? one of the things, all of this stuff about Virgin Queen, was that a case of look here, look over there, because those rumours about Elizabeth being a bit naughty and have never gone away. We've had centuries of them. De Quadra, Dudley wanted him to marry them in the summer of 1561. They're they're just about to celebrate Elizabeth's birthday. Well, why would you do that if you're already married?
Mm-hmm.
And why would you get a Catholic bishop to do it if you're such a dedicated Anglican, like Dudley was allegedly? Except people would change their religion to keep their head on their shoulders, wouldn't they?
Yeah, he had to.
Anyway, my friend ran it through something called betafaceapi.com.wpa./ And in Canada, there's a guy called JP Doucette, who's a retired IT guy. And he has been looking at this because he's fascinated by Shakespeare and a portrait called The Sanders. And he had come to the conclusion that this guy and Robert Dudley were linked through his facial recognition software.
Okay. And
I've known JP for a long time. And so, anyway, we ran it through this one, Betaface. 93.5% similarity to Robert Dudley.
Mm.
Now, JP hadn't thought about running through past Elizabeth, but he did run it past portraits we have of Thomas Howard, 4th Duke of Norfolk, Elizabeth's first cousin, and came up with a very high reading of just under 81%.
Oh, okay.
We ran it through Elizabeth and came up with 89.6%. So
the odds are high on
the odds
facial.
are high that he's related somehow to them. And Elizabeth's mother was Anne, and her mother was a Howard. Right. So Granny was Elizabeth Howard.
So
who have red hair.
Arthur was.
Is he a Howard?
Yeah.
And did he see, was this somebody who had seen portraits of Elizabeth and thought, my God, I look just like her? Or was Elizabeth not the quite so virgin queen that we've all been led to believe?
You know what? I have never believed that she was the virgin queen that she portrayed in her imagery.
You're a redhead?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It never made sense. I don't know.
Can I run this one past you?
Yeah.
When she's with Seymour, the Seymours. When I say the Seymours, I mean Catherine and Tom. And it's recorded that she's caught in the arms of someone male. Was that Tom? Or was it Robert?
Right. Yeah. We don't know.
Well, Robert was up in Norfolk and then at times was at court. We just don't know, do we?
No, it doesn't say she was caught in the arms of Thomas Seymour or the Lord Admiral or any specific name at all. It's just, I think, a man. So
basically, it's a case of do not ruin your reputation, you hot-knickered teenager.
Which has been...
look at who you are. Look at who you are. Look at, you can't risk your reputation.
It's quite convenient then that all the blame gets put on Thomas Seymour for being a pervert. Well, how convenient.
Yeah, but I think there's an awful lot of Victorian agenda on that too. Which did you see that tweet recently with the letter in Elizabeth's hand to Catherine?
Yes.
Written from Cheshunt. Because I thought of you when I saw it and And I thought, oh, I wonder what Rebecca makes of that.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, isn't there?
Oh, masses, masses. Absolutely.
Someday my research will come to light. I might be 102 years old, but
You just got to keep persevering. And, there are an awful lot of theories regarding Anne Boleyn, Catherine Parr, Catherine Howard. And so, everybody has a right to their own theory. So get on with it.
yeah. Yeah.
I look forward to reading it.
Well, you guys, Melanie is my mentor. She is my best friend. She's my second mom. I'm glad that you've gotten to meet Melanie today because she's a very special person in my life who knows so much about art history and has so much to offer this community. So, Melanie, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Well, thank you. It's been fun. I just hope everybody enjoys as much as I have. And again, congratulations on 8 years of podcasting. It's fantastic. Keep at it.
Thank you. And that concludes another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you love the show and would like to show your support, consider becoming a patron over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty. Over there, you'll get commercial-free episodes, early access, and some patron-exclusive content as well. If you would prefer to show your support in another way, head on over to my website, tudorsdynasty.com, and click on the shop to see some of the new merchandise that I have available. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.